Welcome along to today's webinar. It's already the 4th of December and it's our final webinar of the year here from FSSC in the Netherlands. We're broadcasting live and today we have a great webinar for you. And first of all, I'm going to come to my colleagues here in the studio. First of all, Elsby, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Thank you for coming. And Kelly, thank you for coming too.
Thanks, Colin.
And we also have Nerida, who's dialing in all the way from Australia today. And quickly say hello to Nerida. Nerida, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you for coming. So we have us in the Netherlands and Nerida, and today's topic is protecting food, reducing waste with smart packaging. And you'll see me here. I'm looking also at my notes. You can see we're live in the studio. First of all, we're going to come to some practicalities of today's webinar. So first of all, everybody is muted. Please use the Q&A functionality. You can ask questions throughout and we'll take those at the end. And we're also going to record the webinar. It's a question we always have, and that is, can we have a recording? Yes, you can. We're also going to have a survey at the end of the webinar today as well, and we ask you to participate in that. So on the screen, you can see today's topics. So first of all, number one, the importance of packaging in food safety. Elsby, our technical director, will cover that one. The second topic is FSSC 22000 packaging scope. Kelly, our technical manager, will cover that one. And the final one, packaging and food and loss and waste, will be covered by Nerida, who's the WPO Vice President of Sustainability and Save Food. And with that, in a minute, let's have a quick look at a little bit about Foundation FSSC. So for all of you that already know us, and thank you for joining today, you'll know that we're a not-profit organisation based here in the Netherlands. We have two major schemes, FSSC 22000 and FSSC 24000. We also have our development programme, and we also have our digital solutions. This webinar today focuses on 22,000 and the remaining topics of that one. The next thing to be aware of about FSSC is we support consumer goods industry, protecting brands and achieving the targets around sustainability and ISO-based management system. And today, particularly with topics such as the food waste and packaging and protecting food, is very pertinent to us as a foundation. We're a lean organisation, few in number but a global impact, and we're rapidly approaching 37,000 certificates, and our mission is to create an impact and create a better world. Today we're going to show you our new, what we call brand model, and very simple. At the heart of the organisation is a team here at FSSC. We have core areas we focus on: schemes and assurance, which is 22,000, 24,000, and the development programme. We have our capacity building, making a difference by improving capacity around the world. And finally, our digital solutions, where we help our organisation partners, particularly with data, particularly relating to the supply chains. Overall, we provide impact and trust in the world, and our mission is to create a better world. And today we're going to work towards that again by inviting our colleagues. And first of all, we're going to move to Elsby, who's going to tell us about the importance of food packaging. Welcome, Elsby. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you, Colin. And welcome everyone to our webinar today. At FSSC, we recognise packaging as an essential component of the food supply chain integrity and safety. Packaging is our second largest scope within our FSSC 22000 scheme, and currently we have more than 5,500 certificates globally. Through our scheme for packaging manufacturing, we integrate international standards, namely ISO 22000, the ISO TS 22002 Part 4, which is the sector-specific prerequisite program, specifically for food and feed packaging, as well as the additional FSSC 22000 requirements. This holistic approach enables organizations to effectively control food safety hazards, minimize risks, and ensure the production of safe packaging and packaging materials worldwide. On this slide, you can see a quote from our CEO, Eldin Hilbrands, and it highlights that in most cases, when we think about food safety as a consumer, we focus on the product itself, but often we overlook the importance of the packaging. From a food safety perspective, it's crucial to recognize that we purchase the packaging and its contents, and that both contributes to food safety. Our technical manager, Kelly, will provide you with more detail later in the session on what FSSC 22000 packaging entails from a scheme perspective, and then Nerida from WPO will enlighten us about packaging design and how that fits into food loss and waste. In the next part, I'm just briefly going to elaborate a little bit on the relationship between FSSC and WPO. But first, let's have a brief introduction to the World Packaging Organization. WPO is a non-profit federation of national packaging institutes and associations, national packaging professional bodies, regional packaging federations, and other interested parties, also including trade associations. The purpose of WPO includes encouraging the development of packaging technology, science, sustainability, and innovation, contributing to the development of international trade, stimulating education and training in packaging, as well as connecting the global packaging community. Because of the synergies that exist between WPO and FSSC, we became an affiliate member of WPO in 2023, and this affiliation underscores the Foundation's dedication to uphold the integrity and safety standards of packaging materials on a global scale, to drive innovation and elevate food safety practices across the packaging industry, to increase impact through capacity building, to increase impact through capacity building, as well as education through our technical alignment and collaboration, and we work together on sustainability issues. Now, sustainability is an important topic for us at FSSC, and therefore, to support our vision of creating a better world, FSSC also became a member of the UN Global Compact in October 2021. We also included a specific food loss and waste requirement in version 6 of our FSSC 22000 scheme that basically requires organizations to set up policies with measurable targets and objectives on how to reduce food loss and waste in their own organizations. Through our certified organizations, which Colin has mentioned previously is now nearing 37,000, FSSC is actively contributing to SDG 12.3 on reducing food loss and waste. We also focus on sustainability through our collaboration with WPO and its members. Together, we aim to explore innovative solutions to reduce food loss and waste from a packaging design perspective, thereby intending to advance sustainability practices in the packaging industry and to further deliver a positive impact to the consumer goods industry. So that sums up my bit, Colin. Thank you. Back over to you.
Thank you, Elzeby. That was an excellent presentation and really sets us up well for the next presentations. Before we move to Kelly for her presentation, I'd like to let you know that already we've had questions in. It's great news. We've got a couple of questions, one from Thomas and one from Nicholas already. What I'd love to hear from is more questions. Make the most of the opportunity you have today with these experts in the studio and Nerida. And with that, I'm now going to hand over to Kelly. Kelly, over to you for your presentation. We're looking forward to this. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Colin. And again, welcome all. I'm pleased to be in the studio today for today's webinar. And in my part of the webinar, I'll be discussing the packaging scope as part of the FSSC 22000 scheme with you. So to start off with on the slide, you can see all the different scopes that the FSSC 22000 scheme operates within, from food manufacturing through to retail and wholesale, as well as food packaging manufacturing, which is what we're here to discuss today. So the FSSC 22000 scheme applies to the primary and secondary food and feed packaging manufacturers, as well as to the manufacturer of packaging materials used to produce food or feed packaging. So some of the examples of the types of packaging materials that is within the scope of the scheme is displayed on this slide, and this includes from plastic packaging through to paper, metal, or glass packaging. Keep in mind that the scheme only covers packaging material for use in the food or feed industry and not those for home or domestic use. Then on this slide, I'd like to tell you a bit more about what makes the FSSC 22000 scheme special and why it will benefit your packaging manufacturing organization. So the scheme provides a framework for a robust and effective food safety management system, with the emphasis on management systems because we utilize existing ISO standards. And one of the benefits of this is that it all aligns to the harmonized structure of ISO, and that in itself then facilitates integrated management system audits, as well as implementing an integrated management system within your organization. It's a science-based standard and is developed by international experts, and therefore we believe also reliable. And the scheme is GFSI recognized and is approved by the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum, and this also contributes to the global acceptance and technical rigor of our scheme. It's important to also mention that we operate an integrity program, and this is the program that we use to monitor and make sure that our certification bodies are delivering audits and certification in accordance with our scheme requirements and standards. And then also lastly, just to mention that with version 6 of the scheme, we also introduced quality control requirements into the scheme. And this is because it's closely linked to food safety in a manufacturing environment, including for the food packaging manufacturing environment. Then this slide just provides you with an overview of the structure of the scheme and the normative documents or standards related to the scheme. And this includes, as also just briefly touched on by Elsabe, the ISO 22000-2018 standard, which is for the requirements for a food safety management system. The ISO Technical Specification 22002 Part 4, which is the packaging sector specific PRP standard. And then the FSSC 22000 additional requirements included within Part 2 of the scheme document. Now, in addition to these additional requirements, a reminder to also refer to the latest Board of Stakeholders decision list, or BOS decision list, which is available on our website. And this document contains decisions applicable to FSSC 22000, which overrule or provide further clarifications on existing scheme requirements. Then in addition to these scheme documents, the BOS decision list, the Foundation also publishes scheme interpretation articles, and these articles include further clarification or requirements on requirements and the application or implementation of these requirements as well. Now let's have a look at a little bit more on the detail of the different normative standards and how they all contribute into the FSSC 22000 scheme. So starting with ISO 22000-2018, this standard sets out the requirements for food safety management systems. And it adopts the process approach and utilizes the PDCA cycle, so the Plan, Do, Check, Act. From the context of the organization, which is where your organization needs to understand itself and its context, including identifying internal and external issues, to the understanding of the needs and expectations of your interested parties. Then to the requirements on leadership and commitment, which is where you need to look at your organization's leadership and commitment, consider your food safety policy, as well as identify the roles, responsibilities, and authorities within your organization. Then on to the planning section, which is where your organization needs to identify and implement actions to address the risks and opportunities, which is based on those internal and external issues that you had a look at in the context of your organization, as well as the interested parties that you identified. Then also on planning, what your organization needs to do to set up your objectives for your food safety management system, and planning for changes. Next, there's a support section, and this is where the requirements for resources, personnel competence and awareness, communication and documented information is detailed. Then onto operation, which is Chapter 8, which encompasses the operational planning and control, the prerequisite programs, traceability requirements, as well as your HACCP section. Then into Section 9, which is your performance monitoring, your internal audits, your management review, and then on to 10 for your continual improvement and your non-conformity management process. So that just in brief sums up ISO 22000 standard. Then on to the ISO technical specification. This Part 4 contains the detailed prerequisite programs on food safety, specifically for food packaging manufacturing. This standard contains requirements for your establishment, for the layout and the workspace of your facilities, requirements for utilities such as for water and air quality, amongst many other requirements as well for prerequisite programs. So these PRPs are implemented to assist in controlling food safety hazards in the manufacture of food packaging. Now for the additional requirements included within the scheme, which you can find under Section 2.5 of Part 2 of the scheme document. This covers requirements from the management of services and purchase materials through to food defense and food fraud mitigation, and the requirements for food safety and quality culture, amongst many others as well. So in the remaining part of my presentation, I'd like to just speak to you a bit more about some of these additional requirements specific to packaging. So under additional requirement 2.5.1 on management of services and purchase materials, there's a specific requirement for category I, which is the food packaging manufacturing category. So the organization needs to establish criteria related to the use of recycled packaging as a raw material input, and this is for the production of food packaging material. So the organization needs to ensure that the relevant legislation and customer requirements are being met in relation to this as well. But please also note that this requirement only applies to organizations that utilize recycled packaging as a raw material input. Then under additional requirement 2.5.2 on product labeling and printed materials, there is a specific requirement for category I for organizations to establish and implement artwork management and print control procedures where the organization undertakes the printing activities. And those requirements are detailed on this slide. Then, as mentioned earlier, the scheme now includes requirements for basic quality control under additional requirement 2.5.9 and is also applicable to category I for food packaging. In brief, it includes the need for the organization to establish a quality policy and quality objectives, as well as to establish quality parameters for the packaging or packaging types produced. There were also requirements in place for quantity control procedures and a program for calibration and verification of the equipment used for both quantity and quality control. And lastly, to implement line startup and changeover procedures. Then on this slide, it just demonstrates an example of some quality control parameters. It's not an exhaustive list. It's merely for consideration of different quality control parameters for different types of packaging materials. And it's added in just to demonstrate to you what could be considered here. And then lastly, I want to just mention to you additional requirement 2.5.11a, where the organization needs to have specific requirements in place where packaging is used to impart or provide a functional effect of food. And then on that note, this concludes what I wanted to present to you today. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll now hand back over to Colin. Thanks, Colin.
Thank you, Kelly. So, Kelly, that was your first time in the studio presenting.
It was.
Excellent presentation. Thank you very much. We all know you're a real professional and an absolute technical expert here, so thank you for coming today.
Thanks, Colin.
And thank you both for you, actually. Now, our audience would have heard you both South African, but here in the Netherlands. And we're a really, truly global organisation at FSSC. And to further demonstrate how global we are, we're now going to cross to Nerida Kelton, who's in Australia for her part of the presentation. And what a great way to celebrate our 15 years of existence by also being joined by Nerida. So Nerida's the Vice President, Sustainability and Safe Food at WPO. Thank you for coming. And I know it's a bit later on in the evening for you in Australia, so thank you. And we're now going to hand the floor over to you and we're going to enjoy your presentation. Nerida, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Colin. And I really would like to acknowledge FSSC for inviting the WPO here today, and also for the start of what I think will be a fantastic partnership between WPO and your organisation. And, you know, today is really about, for me, is about how we can really elevate the discussion around packaging and food safety. Elspeth has already explained who the WPO are, so I'm not going to go into any detail on that. But at the end of the day, we have now 64 member countries, because we got Peru, became a member last week, which is fantastic. And we are here to help elevate packaging design, improve packaging design around the world. But an area that's really important to me personally, and something that I'm really, really passionate about, is what we call safe food packaging, or packaging that saves food. And one of the areas that we really need to start elevating in discussions around the world is our true role of packaging. And somehow along the way, we've forgotten what the true role of packaging really is. And when you are talking about the true role that packaging can play in minimizing food loss and waste, we need to remind everybody sometimes what the reality of that means. We have 800 million people around the world that are currently starving or are malnourished or suffer from food insecurity. And that equates to 1.5 billion tonnes of food that goes to waste every year, which averages 79 kilograms of food per person. Everyone here today, that's how much we waste annually. But on the other hand, if we could actually take the food, the 1 billion tonnes of food that's wasted, and give it to all of the 800 million people that are starving, we would be able to provide 1.3 meals every single day for those that are impacted by hunger. And when you look at environmental impacts of food waste, it's often so underutilized and under-discussed around the world. We talk about sustainability, we talk about packaging, we talk about environmental impacts, all these carbon footprints, but we do not talk about the carbon footprint of food waste. And when you look at it based on if it was a country, it would in fact be the third largest greenhouse gas emitter in the world. But this is not discussed at the same level as packaging waste. When you are looking at designing packaging and understanding this challenge with food loss and waste, you also need to understand whether it's food loss or food waste. And when you look at this map on the screen, just to give you an idea, the navy is where food is lost in production. And so if you know that, you can actually design better packaging based on that. The yellow is in handling and storage. So again, you can really focus your design in that area. And then all the light blue, which sadly is all the developed countries around the world, it's in household and in consumption. But that really helps to guide you when you're designing your packaging. Another way to design your packaging is to understand that it fits in under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, particularly around 12.3. And that's very much around halving food waste and looking at how we can eliminate all of the food that's going to landfill at the moment. And one of the things that is the most challenging for me and for a lot of the packaging technologists around the world is we don't have the balance right. When we talk about sustainability and environmental impacts, our balance is wrong. All we are talking about is packaging waste. We do not talk about food waste. And we also don't talk about the true role that packaging can play, if designed better, to minimize food loss and waste across a value chain. And so we have to remind people as an industry that packaging has a role. Packaging is there for a purpose. It is designed to contain and protect, preserve, and transport a product all the way through a value chain. Packaging is also there to ensure health and safety of a product and also of us as consumers. And we need to obviously make sure that we keep all product waste to a minimum. We have to make sure that the packaging and the product can withstand all the rigors of transport and logistics. But we also have to make sure that we have the lowest environmental impact where possible for packaging. And this is where it's hard, because we have to find what we call the sweet spot. And the sweet spot is finding optimum pack design, because no packaging designer around the world wants to underpack, which means we're wasting food. And no packaging designer around the world wants to overpack and waste packaging. And so for anyone here today that is a packaging technologist or engineer, it's really hard to find that balance. And sometimes your choices are going to have unintended consequences, and it can be really challenging. But the first step is getting that balance right and making sure that when we are talking about environmental impacts and we're talking about sustainability, the packaging waste and food waste are equally discussed around the world. And so when we are looking at designing better packaging to minimize food loss and waste, the first thing that we need to do is understand the 10 principles for sustainable packaging design. And within the 10 principles, there are two really important ones when we're discussing safe food packaging. Number 1 is designed to reduce product waste. And number 9 is designed for accessibility. And accessibility is very much around openability, inclusivity, being able to handle, grip, hold, control, and open the packaging wherever possible. And when we talk about safe food packaging, it's all encompassing of the standard fundamental definition of packaging that I mentioned before, but it's actually a little bit more than that. It's smarter packaging. It's more intuitive packaging. It's more innovative packaging. And it's very thoughtful packaging that looks at features that can make sure we can extend shelf life and preserve a product for longer, that we can make sure that it's openable and resealable, and then obviously meet global sustainable packaging targets. And so the Safe Food Packaging Design Guidelines, which are available for anyone around the world to access, and you can log on through the QR code and download them, are very much around teaching people how to understand the 5 fundamental principles of how to design better packaging to minimize food loss and waste. And I won't go into these in too much detail, but I just wanted to touch on what it really means for each of the 5 principles. And so when we're looking at number 1, this is very much around designing to contain and protect a product. And that's from spoilage, damage, all the way through from manufacturing, warehousing, all the way through various stages of distribution. And so this is all encompassing of primary, secondary, and tertiary packaging. And it's very much around understanding your palletization, your transport optimization, your load utilization, and all of the things like shocks and vibration through transportation and logistics. Because if you think about it, if you don't have adequate packaging that is fit for purpose and functional, and that can handle transport and logistics, your food will be damaged and you will ultimately waste your food. And it won't get to the household in the right condition if it gets to the household at all. The second one is designed to preserve and extend shelf life. And this is so critical to minimizing food loss and waste, because the longer that we can protect food, the longer that we can extend shelf life and preserve a product, that means we're not going to be wasting it. Particularly when you are looking at taking your product into an export market, we need to make sure that it arrives in the best possible condition and quality and flavor and integrity at the export market destination. And this is around some fantastic areas around looking at your skin and vacuum packaging, your modified atmosphere packaging, the barriers and your performance functionality of your materials. And then also looking at how do we use active and intelligent packaging like 2D codes, QR codes, sensory labels, time temperature indicators, scavengers, all these amazing solutions and technologies that can preserve and extend shelf life, which are so important for what we're talking about today. And then the third one is very much around providing consumer convenience. And this is very much around teaching consumers through intuitive, communicative packaging how to not waste food during handling in the household. And this is about designing your packaging to be easily openable, easily resealable. Can we open it? Can we find the perf points and the tear points? And can we grip it easily? Can we pull a overhanging tab, which I'll show you some examples of, easily and not spill the food and not waste the food? And do we have controlled dispensing and portion control when we're designing our packaging? And then number 4 is around communicating to consumers, because a lot of consumers don't understand how to store products. They don't understand whether they should put something in a pantry or a refrigerator or a freezer. And if they, for example, put it in a freezer, how long do they put it in the freezer for before it turns? And these are all things that can be done on and off pack. And so if we look at intelligent packaging, 2D codes, QR codes, linking it through to websites, we have the ability to communicate all of this to consumers. We can communicate leftover ideas, recipes, food preparation, and we also have the opportunity to explain date labeling. What's the difference between a best before date and a use by date? And helping consumers to understand that difference so that they're not wasting food unnecessarily in their household. And there are a lot of consumer education campaigns around the world that have proven that if we can elevate the discussion and improve education in on-pack date labeling and distinguishing the differences between best before and use by date, we can minimize food waste in a household. And so I would really urge a lot of governments around the world to improve their consumer education on things like date labeling. And then obviously the hardest and most challenging is finding that balance between packaging waste and food waste, and making sure that we get that balance right. And so I just wanted to really briefly show you some fantastic examples of what good best practice packaging that saves food looks like. And the World Star Packaging Awards that are run by the WPO bring together all of the winners from all of the country-based programs, and they bring them together to see what is best in show for packaging that saves food. And this is a fantastic new special award that we have in the World Star Awards that we really encourage all of you to encourage your brands and customers to enter these awards, because we need more examples of best practice. We need best practice examples to show people how to design better packaging to minimize food loss and waste. And so this is the example of our winner for 2024. It came out of Spain and it's called AgroLife. And the AgroLife treatment is an active packaging treatment that's applied to the packaging that you can see. And it's designed to preserve and extend the shelf life of produce. And it also has some patent technologies behind it that not only extends the shelf life of the fresh produce, but it reduces the losses of the excess maturation, and it also absorbs the ethylene, which is delaying the ripening process for so many of the fresh produce items. Another really good example has come out of Chile, and this is a fantastic example of a small business working with a large multinational. So Copper Protect came together with Amcor in Chile, and they came up with lifespan copper-based film. And it is copper microparticles that not only inhibit the development of microorganisms, but it extends the shelf life. And the ideal solutions are cheese, processed meats, hams, bacons, fresh chicken, and ultimately this preserves and protects the product all the way through the value chain. And then if we come all the way down into my region, we have some intelligent packaging, which is thermochromic dye technology. And this is a fantastic solution for cold chain environments. And so it is designed to change color. The lid of this bottle is designed to change color as the environment changes. And what I mean by environment, I mean temperature. And so the cold chain temperatures are set, the parameters are set by the brand, and then they can watch this go through the transport and logistics all the way through into the retail stores. And if at any point in the value chain the temperature changes, which can affect the food or the beverage, they will be alerted to this. And the color changes visually on the cap, but there's also a system that sits behind it that will alert the brand that there have been temperature changes. And so they can intervene very quickly and make sure that they're not losing the food or beverage along the value chain. And I touched on extension of shelf life for export market, and this is a fantastic example. And so basically what this is very expensive premium meat, and it goes to a very interesting export market. But one of the challenges with this meat is it has bones in it. And so the bones were splitting through the packaging, the previous packaging. And because they were splitting through the packaging, it was creating a really high amount of food loss and food waste through the value chain. And most of it wasn't getting to the export market in the right quality. And so the company called Junie Lamb had seen that they were wasting about 30 to 40% of their products in the export market due to damage because of the poor packaging. And so they came up with a customized solution with their packaging supplier that protects the bones. And so because it's been designed with what they call an in-bone guard protection, the bones do not split through the packaging, and so they have a perfect, beautiful premium meat that goes to the export market in the best condition. And then this one's a really interesting one. This is in China, and this is in a region that has a very high diet of eggs. And they were finding that they were losing a lot of their eggs, breaking a lot of their eggs once they purchased them in the markets because they were transporting them back to their homes. And so they came up with this amazing modular and flexible system. And depending on how many eggs you purchase at a time, as you can see, you can layer it and you carry it to the markets, you put your eggs in and you bring it back. The fantastic thing about this is you can store your eggs in this. You can protect your eggs through transportation. You can protect them at home. And just by changing to this fantastic solution, not only were they able to extend the shelf life of the eggs by 50%, they actually had 50% less egg damage as well. Another fantastic example comes out of Brazil, and this is very much around fresh produce. And they were looking at something that could handle protecting the product through transportation and logistics. And so they came up with a modular system with a high thermal insulation barrier. They was able to protect the product from having any damage in transportation. And they were also made sure that it could preserve and extend the shelf life of the produce. They had some significant gains in shelf life extension and also in less of damage across their value chain. Another solution that's come out of Sri Lanka is for prawns. And Sri Lanka has very high humidity, and a lot of the prawns are transported in summer. And so they wanted to come up with some packaging that could not only protect the product, but prevent it from having bad odors, retain the freshness of the product, and make sure that they were able to enhance the shelf life of the product. And so you'll see in the top left and right-hand corners of the pack, they have easy to tear notches or openable perfs. And they also have a resealable zipper, which you'll see at the top of the package, so that you can easily open it and you can easily reseal it. And these are all the types of features that we need to see more of around the world. But then you come to countries like Kenya and a lot of developing countries, and the challenge is that most of the solutions that I've shown you are very much for developed countries. And so we need to also look at, well, what are solutions that are going to fit developing countries and how can we help them and what are their challenges with food loss and waste? And one of the challenges that Kenya faces is that they grow a lot of maize, but they don't have the solutions, their packaging solutions, to be able to protect it and preserve and extend the shelf life of it. They don't have drying sheets, and so they rely on the drying of the maize by the sun. And they also don't have hermetically sealed bags for a lot of their maize. And what that means is they have infestations of insects that come in through the bags, they eat through the material, and they eat the food. We did a study with our Kenyan Packaging Association, and they were finding that they had a 40% food waste because of the no drying sheets and no ability to afford or access hermetically sealed bags. And so with these new trials, they were able to preserve and minimize that food waste and also come up with some solutions through South Africa to access some affordable hermetically sealed bags. And so these are some ideas that are really great that we can then use as best practice examples for other countries. And this is another example of a post-harvest storage system for rice. And so it doesn't have to be an intelligent packaging solution or a thermochromic dye technology. It could be something as simple as coming up with a better solution for storing and preserving really, really important feedstocks like maize, like rice, grains, and making sure that they don't get infestations of insects and pests through the lack of quality packaging material. And then some other examples just to show you is small portion control cucumbers that extend the shelf life of a product. And this is very much around small portion control and consumer convenience in developed countries. And it's an active packaging that actually breathes modified atmosphere through to be able to extend the shelf life of the cucumbers. And so again, depending on the market, depending on the region, something like this can be ideally suited to extend the shelf life of cucumbers so you don't get soggy cucumbers. And then this one I wanted to show you, it's one of my favorites. You can see down the bottom, you have a light green triangle and a perforation. And if you just have a think for a moment, why would you have a perforated area down the bottom of a chip packet or a crisp packet, depending on what you call it? And so if you think about, if you like crisps or chips like me, and you eat the packet, what happens at the end of the packet? You get all these crumbs. And most of us are guilty of tipping the pack up like this and trying to make sure we get all of the chips out of the pack. Now, this is just a fun marketing idea to be able to use the perforation to get every single Smith crisp, every single chip out of that packet and not waste food. So I think that's a fantastic idea. And so one of the things that I wanted to share with you too is that there are so many available resources that have been developed not only through the World Packaging Organization, but also local country-based organizations that are members of the WPO. And the first one is the Safe Food Packaging Design Criteria resource booklet, which actually came out of Australia and New Zealand. And we're really happy to be able to share that with everybody around the world and through the WPO to provide support and training and workshops so that people can design better packaging. We also have made sure that we have other resources through the WPO which are available free of charge on the website, and we have best practice World Star winning case studies, again, to help people to understand what is available and to learn from it and take some of these features and design capabilities and implement them in your own products. We've also worked very closely with Save Food Org, FAO, UNIDO, and we are very proud of the fact that we are a part of Save Food Org, and we support the project competition through judging and supporting the program. And you have some fantastic examples of some winners like SIG through a Cartons for Good Foundation program that they've developed. And just to give you an idea of what this is about teaching regional communities how to take produce that is ploughed back into field, teach them how to create nutritional meals for their communities through their villages, teach them how to cook, and then how to access the packaging that can extend shelf life and preserve the product so that they have accessible food for a longer time for communities. Now, it's a fantastic initiative that I really encourage people to have a look at. And then another thing that's really important to us is to recognise the International Day of Awareness of Food Loss and Waste on the 29th of September every year. We encourage our 64 member countries to do some webinars, media events, conferences, launches, to really get that conversation out there about the true role that packaging plays in minimising food loss and waste. And the next thing that we are about to launch is a new position paper that's been developed by UNIDO, the WPO, and Wageningen. And again, we're really, really proud of this. We're bringing together all of our independent knowledge and expertise together to provide this new position paper on how to navigate the food loss and waste paradox, and to give some best practice examples along the way. And so at the end of the day, it really is about getting that balance right. And for everybody here today, it's about making sure that when you are talking about environmental impacts, carbon footprint, sustainability, to please make sure that you talk equally about packaging waste and food waste, because the environmental impact of food waste is so much higher, and packaging has a significant role to play in minimising food loss and waste if we get the design right at the start. So thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, and I really welcome any questions.
Nerida, thank you. That was fantastic, very comprehensive. We are so pleased to have you join us today. I'm not sure about our audience, but all that talk of crisps made us a bit hungry here in the studio, actually. But some great advances there. And we do have some questions, actually. I think what we'll do is, Nerida, will take a couple of questions for you first. And then I've got a couple for the team in the studio. And there are so many questions, I'm not even sure we're going to get through all of them. So thank you very much for your audience participation. The first question, I'm going to read it off my screen here live, is a question about, for Nerida, does the food loss, sorry, wrong question, go back a stage. Are packaging technologists and engineers really considering the design principles within their NPD processes? I think you may have spoken a bit about this, but if you want to give us an answer to that question specifically.
Yeah, and that's an excellent question. And no, they're not. And we started this conversation around safe food packaging. We undertook the research about years ago at RMIT University in Australia. And we identified not only here in our region, but also globally, that there's not enough conversation around this. And so a lot of the conversations and decisions that are made in the NPD process are not considering the environmental impacts or the consideration of what could happen potentially with an unintended consequence of food waste. And so that's why we've spent the last 6 or 7 years really trying to have this conversation. And we will continue to have this conversation until more packaging designers and more technologists around the world embed those principles. And that's the ultimate goal. That's what I would like to see. In 5, 6, 7 years' time, I would like to see more countries around the world and more designers around the world embedding those principles in their NPD process. But we are getting there, but it's a slow process.
Thank you, Nerida. And kind of a similar question, really, obviously. How can companies find the balance between packaging waste and food waste? Another question for you, and then I think we'll have one for the team here.
Yeah, I think that's that one. We need a whole separate webinar on that, because it really is a challenge, because packaging waste is driving all the decisions, all the regulations, all of the conversations that we're having around the world at the moment. But again, I would argue that the environmental impact of food waste is higher, and it's not discussed. And until we can have those conversations to say, if you are a food and beverage manufacturer, surely the unintended consequence of losing all of the product that you have produced and the costs that are surrounding that have to be discussed at some point. And surely losing food and wasting food in a household because we have poor design needs to be discussed. So I don't think we have the balance right. We're not even close. We've just got to keep having that conversation.
Thank you, Nerida. Big topic, very challenging, and great answer, thank you. Now I'm going to turn to Elzeby, I think, in the studio here. Elzeby, question for you. Does the food loss and waste requirement in the FSSC 22,000 scheme apply to the packaging scope?
Thanks, Colin. And yes, that's actually a very good question, and one we talked about quite a lot when we started introducing food loss and waste into the scheme, because food loss and waste is not your typical topic when it comes to food safety. And there was a lot of debate on introducing it into the scheme. So the short answer to your question is, no, it does not cover packaging at this point in time. And the main reason for that is because we wanted to introduce the topic and we didn't want to make it too onerous to start with. But it's definitely coming at some point. And this ties in very much to what Nerida has been explaining. It's sort of trying to find this balance in terms of food waste from the traditional actual product perspective and the packaging perspective. But it's a really important topic and definitely something that needs to that we need to continue working on.
Let's get back to and continue, and particularly with when the audience would have seen our model about impact as well on the world and how we can really drive an impact upon that too. So this is a great opportunity as well, having WPO in today and to talk about these topics as well. Thank you, Elsaby. Kelly, did you have a comment?
Just also wanted to add that, like Elsaby says, although it's not covering category I for the food packaging manufacturers itself, the food manufacturers out there, when they're looking to reduce their food loss and waste, still need to have a look at this because they need to see what they can do in order to reduce their overall food loss and waste. So it's still a really important factor for them to consider, although the packaging manufacturers itself isn't included in that requirement at the time.
Thank you. Thank you for extra comments there. And you'll see actually a lot of the questions we have today are either about this very specifically, and there are also some more general questions about FSSC 22000. I think actually we've probably only got time for one, two at a push. So another question here from one of our audience members is, are there special requirements for auditors assessing food packaging manufacturing operations? Elsaby, can I come to you for the answer to that one as well?
Yeah, sure. And yes, they are, because I mean, as you can imagine, packaging is very different to food products as such. So we do have specific requirements that can be found in part 4 of our scheme. But essentially, there's 2 pathways. One is where we require the individual to have an education in packaging and obviously work experience. But there's also a pathway for existing food safety auditors qualified to FSSC 22000 already that can progress into packaging, and they can do that through a specific course. And this is also where we're working together with WPO. So the minimum is at least a 30-hour WPO recognized course or equivalent. And then obviously when you go into the detail of the specific packaging, so for example, glass or plastic, then the auditor would also need some very specific knowledge and expertise in those areas.
Thank you, Elsaby. Anything to add, Kelly?
No.
No? Good. Excellent. So, well, we've only got a sort of 5 minutes left now. So I think we'll start to wrap up there. Nerida, thank you very much for joining us today. We've got lots more questions, but you had such a comprehensive presentation that we'll leave it there. Of course, people I'm sure could also contact you, and you're always there to help, I'm sure, as are our team here in the studio. So with that, I think we'll start to wrap up the presentation for today. We've got a couple of last slides. First of all, thank you very much for the team in the studio. Elsaby, great to see you here. Thank you for coming in. And Kelly, thank you for coming in. Great to see you in the studio for your first presentation today. Hopefully the start of many. And Nerida, all the way from Australia, thank you for dialing in too. A quick look at the overall FSSC market rep team, which is the team I have the pleasure of looking after. So I'm Colin Morgan, the Market Development Director here at FSSC. And around the world, we have many of our colleagues, over 50 of us around the world, plus some here in the Netherlands. And there's additional people you can speak to in your region, and they're listed here. And they go right from Hiroshi in Japan, all the way around the world to Giuliani in Latin America. We also have a dedicated team member looking after FSSC 24000 as well. That's Alice Pelfrey, and this week we celebrated a third certificate we already have for an organisation in Italy. And we also have my colleague Erwin, who looks after digital solutions. So that and our other teams around the world, including Technical and Integrity Programme, here to help you at FSSC. This starts to bring together now the end of our final webinar for the year. It's our 15th anniversary. And as we approach 37,000 certificates, we thank you all for your support as our valuable stakeholders. Thank you for all your questions today. It's been a pleasure presenting these last couple of webinars, and we have many more lined up for you next year, right here from the studio in the Netherlands, and we'll be publishing details about those shortly. In the meantime, after today's session, you'll receive a questionnaire about the survey about the session today. Hopefully you've enjoyed it, and we always have pleasure in you joining us, and thank you very much from all of us here at Foundation FSSC in the Netherlands and our colleagues also Nerida in Australia. Thank you for your time today, and that brings us to a close. Good day to you all.